to you.
Good afternoon, which is just now. Yeah, so 4 for the price of 1, and we're going to work like this, a bit of a kind of 4 by 100 metre relay race with me starting. We're from Anglia Ruskin University. I would say go and visit our stand. We had lots of jelly beans, but apparently jelly beans are really popular with delegates here, so there aren't many jelly beans left, but do go and visit our stand. We're in the east of England, in the UK, in Cambridge and in Chelmsford. I imagine you've heard of Cambridge, probably less so Chelmsford. And actually, I know many of us, obviously with the election going on, have been checking our Twitter. One of the really positive things that have come out are we have more elected female MPs than ever now in the UK, which is marvellous, over 200. Work to go, but we're delighted to see that. And I think it links with what we were saying here. So I'm going to talk about the Women's Network that we set up at Anglia Ruskin. I'm hoping my PowerPoint is going to be lined up, is it? There should be a PowerPoint that's somewhere going to start.
It's not starting yet because my mic's still on, so I can't actually talk or breathe or do anything. So I think they're trying to turn my mic off. So there you go. Oh, my mic is on.
Oh, there we go. There we go. So, just loosely, we're going to literally just talk through the background of how we established the network, some reflections on the events and some of the activities, the practical activities. And it works actually very well with what Professor Wong was talking about in her talk earlier. Looking at the other networks that have actually kind of grown as a result of the Women's Network and where we might be taking it. I would say 10 years ago, we had a network at our university, but it was a faltering women's network, established in the 1990s, but it really lost quite a lot of its momentum, ended up being a bit of a moaning session, you know, at some of the sessions, and eventually died. So I would say later on, our HR team, and I'm joined by the director of HR, said we need to do this. Reluctantly, I think some of us got together, and in 2014, in December, we had a steering group. A mix of colleagues came together, academic and professional services, and I think we wanted to reflect that team approach with the 4 of us here. I would say that the first meeting was greatly successful, but it was actually quite painful, to be fair, and again, quite a negative session focusing on what isn't good at our university and suggesting one of our key aims should be about finding childcare. There's nothing wrong in that. I don't have children, so do I belong in a women's network? So what was fortunate as a result of that, the meeting left, but actually Caroline, myself, and a colleague called Rachel kind of stayed behind and started talking about this. And actually we shared an interest in equality and gender that doesn't necessarily involve childcare. And that was where it started. And we thought, hang on a second, there are so few women in leadership positions, particularly in the UK. It was actually in our university, between Kez's faculty and mine, we have a total of 1 female professor. So there were some issues there that we wanted to look at. And much like yesterday, when we imagine a leader or a scientist or a rocket scientist, I think there is that male persona that we think of. So we're thinking, okay, we need to change that within our university. In the UK, about 20%, and obviously it changes day by day, of professors are women. So we really need to address that. Encouragingly, about 29% of our vice-chancellors are women, and that is a record number as well. So that is growing, so there is movement. Perhaps shockingly, and I also co-chair our Black Minority Ethnic Network, in 2015, there were just 17 BME female professors in the UK. Which is, I was quite surprised. I had to check that one twice. 2017, there were 54. So there is still such a long way to go. And we talk about intersectionality, and I think we'll address that fairly shortly. So chronic underrepresentation, as David was alluding to this morning. So what did we do? We arranged a senior leadership team. Thankfully, we have 2 deputy vice-chancellors that were willing, 2 female deputy vice-chancellors, willing to tell their story, warts and all, harassment, discrimination that they'd experienced through their career. And interestingly, over 100 staff attended that. I think many, because we're just nosy about our senior team's personal lives, but actually it was really quite fascinating because they were honest, and it attracted men, it attracted women, and it got the ball rolling. We also took an opportunity to take advantage of an all-staff event. We called it Campus Explore. Had 1,000 staff just milling around the campuses, looking at things, and we canvassed what colleagues wanted from a new look women's network. Displayed all sorts of different articles that appear in newspapers and magazines to highlight the issue. And it's very clear after a few questionnaires and opportunities to talk to staff, and this is the whole university, that colleagues are unanimous we should focus on career development, research and mentoring. And how that's going to go forward, I'm going to hand over now to Caroline to tell you how that went.
So thankfully I am pleased to say that since the relaunch, our network has gone from strength to strength. We hold at least one event per semester and have an annual conference on International Women's Day, an obvious day to choose, and certainly in an academic calendar, March is a good time to do a conference that brings together lots of different staff. We do carefully, routinely, formally evaluate our sessions, and the written feedback that we've received has been overwhelmingly positive, with over 90% of staff evaluating events as very good or excellent, which is hugely affirming for us in terms of the direction we've chosen. In addition, as you can imagine, we get lots of anecdotal feedback on sessions, and that's a hugely useful feature, those individual conversations that you have with staff where ideas form conversations, take you in a direction that you might not have been initially thinking of. And we do routinely get thanked for the work of the network in inspiring members who may now feel ready to go for a promotion that they might not have done otherwise, which is a fantastic outcome. We kicked off our lunchtime series with highlights from academic colleagues' research, so focusing on gender inequality challenges from the worlds of business, psychology, and also in health and social care. And I think having that academic steer within a university was a great draw for some of our academic staff who don't traditionally always get involved in networks, but that's definitely helped ours succeed, I feel. We've welcomed external, national and international keynote speakers, and as Sally said, invited senior female leaders at ARU with diverse career paths to show that it can be done. Certainly many of those have worked in other institutions, and you could see their career path around the UK. We've held interactive workshops covering topics such as media representation of gender, a hugely interesting topic, and also quite a lot of work around the imposter phenomenon. It's not something I'd heard of until about a year, 2 years ago, but as soon as I'd started looking at that research, it resonated so strongly, and it's definitely changed the way I know, I think, and speak. So that's definitely been of use to find out more about. So to date, everything we've done has definitely resonated with the members. We've built the network, we've gained new colleagues almost after every session, which has been really, really pleasing. We've deliberately signposted all of these sessions as being open to all our staff. So your gender is irrelevant. We want you to come along to our sessions. We haven't been wholly successful in getting lots of our male colleagues join, but there's work in progress. For me, there's no point in having these conversations unless we're having them across society. Unfortunately, last year, one of our staff was the victim of serious domestic violence, and her husband was found guilty of attempted murder. This understandably upset all of our staff, and many of our student population who knew this member of staff. And there was some criticism of a lack of support within the university on this. So we immediately engaged our staff networks and ran a women's network session led by a leading national campaigner against violence towards women and girls. So although this didn't focus on our official career development aims and objectives, it was attended by a good number of staff and students and helped support some research. As an aside, it created a link between our staff networks and our health and wellbeing group. And we're now undertaking work with the White Ribbon campaign against male violence, which helps strengthen our employee support mechanisms. We're also one of the founding organisations for work with the UK government on domestic violence. So regarding the two most recent conferences, the 2016 one was an international theme all about the Pledge for Parity, We had over 100 ARU staff delegates who learned about networking techniques and engaged in sessions on how women were perceived in the workplace. I think it's one of those things that if you're aware of the potential barriers in front of you, that gives you a darn good, or it's a better chance of being able to leap over them or crash through them, whichever the technique is you want to go for. Following that conference, we were approached by 2 members who wanted to establish a part-time and flexible workers network. And a year later, that network has made a lot of progress, and there continues to be a lot of synergy between the 2 networks. I guess it's inevitable, and so we do quite a lot of work together. For the 2017 conference, we adopted the International Women's Day theme of being bold for change, and focused on supporting one another and encouraging colleagues to be bold, not just in their career choices, but also in their personal lives. I think having having flexibility within your working life certainly helps to enrich your life and helps to support employee development and engagement. So it's not just about it being good for employees, it's therefore obviously good for you as an organisation. We covered compassionate and collaborative leadership. Actually, that could work together, couldn't it? That could be a new word, which spoke strongly to our members. It is a facet of leadership that's more commonly associated with women, and we intend to do more work in this area to encourage more of this approach, irrespective of the gender that you've chosen as a manager. So the feedback from this conference, again, was really positive, with delegates committing to be bolder in their lives. We've got some of the quotes there. And it did inspire a staff disability network to be set up. And again, it was members of the Women's Network that stepped forward to lead that. So we're having quite an impact in creating networks across ARU. I have to be honest, my vision really is that at some stage we won't need to have all of these individual networks, but we'll move to an inclusivity network. You know, many colleagues have already mentioned the notion of intersectionality. It's almost slightly artificial to focus on one aspect, but definitely at the moment that seems to have some impact and some need. So one of the international speaker that we had at this conference made mention of some women acting like crabs in a bucket. I've never heard of this metaphor before, but apparently if one crab is in a bucket alone, it will climb out. But if there are more, each attempts to pull the others down and climb over them such that none are able to escape. This metaphor really resonated with our members, many of whom explicitly stated on their feedback forms that they had no intention of being a crab and would ensure that they were supportive of other women's ambitions and would do more to celebrate success. So for me, again, that takes us back to the notion of collaborative and compassionate leadership. I've heard a lot about mentoring over the last couple of days. I think it's one of those incredibly important areas that all institutions should take seriously. So we do have a Women's Network mentoring programme. So having stated the importance of role models and outlined how female leaders have encouraged staff, there is clearly still a limited number of female role models within our wider society, and that's certainly replicated within higher education. So as senior female leaders at ARU, we firmly believe that we have a responsibility to encourage those around us and to nurture talent both individually through mentoring and more broadly with our events and activities. It's certainly one of the principal reasons we champion our Women's Network.
Thank you. Right, my name's Kes Latham. I'm a reader in optometry at Anglia Ruskin, and I'm going to talk now briefly about how our networks have influenced our approaches to the Athena Swan programme that's been outlined already so eloquently by David Rubain this morning. We've made significant progress over the last couple of years within Athena Swan, since we were awarded an Athena Swan Institutional Bronze Award a couple of years ago. We're very hopeful that our networks are going to help us provide the evidence base for our Institutional Silver Award coming up in about 2018, and also with departmental level submissions, which we're starting on a per faculty basis at the moment, and I'm leading the one for our Faculty of Science and Technology. So one of the issues has been work balance. Our 2015 staff survey gave us great cause for concern in terms of work-life balance. And as a result of that, we've been working with our part-time and flexible workers network, and we signed up with the charitable organisation Working Families. Now, their remit is to support work-life balance for working parents. And we've adopted one of their campaigns, which is the Happy to Talk Flexible Working campaign. And the purpose of this campaign is that it moves recruitment to a starting point that work can be done flexibly unless otherwise stated, rather than the other way round, which was previously the case. And actually it was feedback from our network members that really gave us the evidence to persuade our senior management that this was a really good thing to take on. A lot of them were anti-flexible working to start with, but the evidence from our networks really persuaded them of the business case for taking on this kind of thing. Subsequent to that, we were the first higher education institute in the UK to sign up to the Hire Me My Way campaign, which is again around flexible working. And again, it was the voice of our networks combined with evidence for the impact that this would have on our Athena Swan submissions that secured the commitment to this programme. And as a result, we've just recruited our first flexible senior manager, and this certainly wouldn't have happened a year ago. Meanwhile, there's other small wins that we've been able to take on, like adopting the Working Families campaign of the national initiative of Go Home on Time Day. Now, this year, that is set for the longest day of the year, the 21st of June, so we can make the absolute most of it. And I should point out that this initiative is not around this being the only day of the year that you might go home on time, but simply as a recognition that going home on time and work-life balance is an important thing for everybody. So particularly the work of our part-time and flexible workers network has been influencing our Athena Swan applications, and we've been told that this has been an example of best practice, and in fact in very large print here, we're delighted that we've been nominated for a Working Families Award this year. We've been shortlisted for their 2017 Allen and Overy Best for Innovation Award, alongside employers like Barclays, Ernst Young and Grant Thornton, for this award that recognises companies that have been innovative in their approach to building a flexible, high-performance, family-friendly organisation. So we're delighted to have got to that point with this. There are other things within our Athena Swan submissions that have been identified as areas where we do need to make progress, and these are common themes that have been coming up over the last couple of days, I would say. Certainly the need to provide additional support for career development was identified strongly in our Bronze Award. And we've taken actions to address these needs, including things like revamping the mentoring scheme, as was mentioned, in collaboration with the Women's Network. And we've also introduced some new schemes for staff who are returning after family leave. So we have a buddy scheme whereby we pair a member of staff coming back from family leave with somebody else working in another working parent working within the university. And we also have a returners scheme which provides practical funding for people returning after a career break for some reason, to provide them either with training or help getting the research back off the ground, whatever it might be. And our inclusivity networks are also championing this career development through these sessions, provision of sessions, and anecdotally we've had quite a lot of evidence that these are really helpful, particularly after the sessions on the imposter syndrome. We're told that this has given people the confidence to apply for promotion where perhaps they hadn't thought about that before. So that's our progress on the Athena Swan side of things. I'll now hand over to Denise to talk about the networks more widely.
Thank you. I guess by a process of elimination, you've worked out that I'm Denise Smith, the HR Director at Anglia Ruskin. So I just wanted to add a couple of more dimensions to the conversation that we're having today. And perhaps first of all, to pick up on Sally's point at the beginning, where she mentioned that there was some reluctance. You know, we all drew one of those big breaths and went, when the suggestion came up to establish a women's network, and just to share with you what that was all about. I think we felt quite strongly, it probably comes as no surprise to you, that our HR department is predominantly female. So we had some concerns that we were being asked to do this because we were women and therefore we ought to be doing it. But I think added to that was the fact that we felt very strongly that we didn't think this was something that HR should necessarily be driving forward. We felt very strongly that it needed to be driven bottom up, and the enthusiasm had to come from the floor, so to speak. We got to where we are, I have to say, by one of my colleagues in HR, a lady called Rachel Cornwall, who's our head of talent management and development. So I feel a little bit of an imposter myself today, because it's really Rachel who should be here talking to you. And she is largely responsible for taking forward a lot of the work that we've done and our achievements in respect of staff networks. It is not a formal part of Rachel's role, and I think that's really important to understand. This is a person who has done this work on a voluntary basis, and I'll come back to that in just a moment. But I'd also just like to mention that her achievements have very recently been recognised, because she has been awarded a Vice-Chancellor's Award for that work. And that is about demonstrating that this isn't part of the job, isn't something that should be expected from that particular role holder, but it is about some activity and achievement that an individual's been involved in, where they've gone that extra mile, they've gone over and above in contributing to our corporate objectives, and Rachel has certainly done that, so her recognition and award is well deserved. So, we do provide some support from HR. We're not just a load of moaning whingers. We help all of the networks with organisation and planning. We usually find a bit of budget to help them with their activities, whether that's just for some refreshments or to pay for a speaker. But we've also recently had a step change in that respect. I'm sure colleagues will be familiar with budgeting processes. For us, it's the time of year when we're setting and agreeing budgets for next year. And we've decided to take a step which says we're not just going to find some money, which just feels a bit gratuitous in the future. We're actually going to formally allocate some money. So what we've done is taken some of our corporate staff development funds and we've ring-fenced some for employee engagement activities, which we include in that our staff network activities. And I think that's an important step just in terms of how that looks and feels in the organisation. So we now have 5 staff networks, which is quite an achievement for us. We have the Women's Network, as we said, which is now our most established network. And that has certainly contributed to the newer networks. We have the Part-Time and Flexible Working Forum, which was a spin-off from the Women's Network. But I repeatedly say that flexible working is not about women, it is not about parenting. You know, it is a fact that women are likely to be the most benefit the most from those activities. But until we get people to acknowledge and recognise that it's bigger than that, it makes sense with a modern workforce, and particularly with that millennial workforce that's, you know, coming up to hit us, that will have completely different views about the ways of work. We've also talked about our LGBT network, which is one of our much newer networks, BME, which Sally co-leads, and the most recent one is the Disabled Staff Network, which has proved to be the most challenging to set up, having someone who was prepared to stand up and put their hand up and say, yes, I want to do this. Lots of people saying, yes, I think it's a good idea, but that's quite different to saying, yes, I'm prepared to lead on this. All of the activities of our networks, we believe, are aligned with our institutional goals. So, for instance, our BME group are helping us support targets to increase the numbers of BME staff at a senior level. None of them operate as silos. More recently, we've decided to rebrand the networks, or I should say the networks have decided to rebrand themselves and have now become inclusivity networks. I have asked that the word staff is still included, just to differentiate and not cause confusion amongst the broader university community and student populations who also have lots of active interest in inclusivity networks. Of course, it produces an interesting acronym. They are now SINs. All of the network leads work closely together and share ideas. We're holding the first joint event, as I think colleagues have mentioned, in the summer. And that is going to focus on the overarching theme that cuts across all the networks, mentoring and career development, and we've got an appropriate speaker for that. We're paying particular focus to intersectionality and supporting our Athena Swan submissions. I thought David Rubain's speech this morning was absolutely great. Anyone who's already achieved Athena Swan will know this. Anyone who's thinking about it, don't underestimate the amount of work that's needed in relation to Athena Swan, please. We've talked about the buddy and mentor schemes that have been a consequence and an outcome of the networks, and that's not to say that we haven't thought about these things as good things to do. Sometimes our networks give us ideas. Other times what they do is they mean that we accelerate the pace at which we take some things forward, and I think all of those things are valid and really important. Mentoring schemes, we also include reverse mentoring, which as a concept is really, really valuable. We also take the opportunity to share best practice through the networks. For instance, one of our faculties adopted some strict email rules linked to work-life balance. We probably all know how bombarded we get with emails. I know that I'm one of the guilty who sat here checking emails throughout the conference. You know, it is a way of life for us all. But this particular faculty, our Faculty of Health, Social Care and Education, has a dean who's particularly proactive in relation to employee engagement and work-life balance. And having listened to feedback from colleagues, the faculty decided that they were going to agree amongst themselves. So they are rules in inverted commas. There are no penalties for breaking the rules. It's about respecting each other and the way we work. That they won't email each other at the weekend unless it becomes absolutely necessary, and nor will they email out of hours. Now, the concept of out of hours becomes more challenging depending on what role you're actually in, particularly for academic colleagues, and there are all the tensions around the demands that students make on colleagues as well, and their expectations. But that one small change has had quite a big impact locally in that faculty, and those arrangements are now being adopted by all our other faculties. The networks have also helped with what we've termed HR myth busting, which is along the lines of you can't do that because HR says you can't. Well, HR aren't the thought police, and many times it is a complete myth. HR probably doesn't have a view on it, or would say so what, or how can we help you achieve what it is you're looking to achieve. So the networks have provided an opportunity where people are confident enough to speak out about some issues, and then those myths can actually be dispelled through the networks. And that in turn has led us to refocus some of our corporate staff development activities in our training of middle managers in particular, so that some of that training is more targeted to deal with some of those misconceptions about how things operate. Colleagues have also mentioned presenteeism culture. We're challenging that. We shouldn't be valuing people because they turn up in the office, maybe sitting, surfing on the internet, who knows what. I'm sure they're not. But that's absolutely the wrong concept. People's contribution should not be measured in that way. We are no fools. We know that not all jobs lend themselves to flexible working. And that is the bottom line. And we are very open and honest about that in the organisation. If you are a receptionist, you have to be sitting on reception, or at least at the moment you do at ARU. If you are an academic and you are scheduled to teach, then unless that's distance learning, then you are actually expected to do that in the classroom, in the lecture theatre. And so, there are some open, honest constraints that make common sense. But where we are able to have a conversation about flexible working, then we will certainly do that. We've also identified a concept which we labelled bad manager syndrome. Because we used to have that private conversation in HR, that's just one of those bad managers. But we're now talking about that much more openly. We had a conversation at a recent planning meeting, which the Vice-Chancellor was chairing, and I say tongue-in-cheek that he is now actually using the same terminology. He's not claiming it's his idea, though, but he is a man. One of the outcomes of the part-time and flexible workers network is some guidance, which again is about dispelling some of the myths and concerns that managers have around flexible working. That's still in draft format at the moment, working its way around the system. But that, I think, is a really clear case of how individual members of staff can actually proactively influence what happens in a university environment. We recently asked all of our networks to help us improve response rates in our staff survey. We run a staff opinion survey every 2 years. We ran the latest one in the spring this year, and it was quite interesting to see that when we asked for help from the networks, they were proactive, and that was evidenced by a peak in response rates because we've got regular updates, and I'm under no illusion that they made a major contribution to improving employee voice and raising those response rates to 88%, which is great by any stretch of the imagination. So, just to draw things to a conclusion, equality, diversity and inclusion is absolutely a strategic priority at Anglia Ruskin. It's embedded in our values. Our overall ambition for the next 5 years is to create a more inclusive and successful learning community for our students and staff by increasing our focus on equality and diversity. Those ambitions are supported by action plans. We've heard conversations about targets. Those action plans include key performance indicators and targets. They are input, output, and outcome focused. We've talked about career development and support and the accelerated pace of change that the networks are contributing to. We've also talked about the White Ribbon Campaign. For those of you who aren't aware, the White Ribbon Campaign is a UK branch of the global campaign to ensure that men and boys take more responsibility to end violence against women. Our Vice-Chancellor is the champion. We have increased engagement, awareness and flexibility from our managers. And most recently, and indeed as an outcome of this conference, we are making further partnerships and alliances, both in our region and on a wider basis, for our networks. So thank you for listening.
Thank you very much, our four speakers. I find it amusing that actually, whilst we were listening to you, Dr. Ulf Schneider downstairs was talking about strategies and opportunities to partner with and engage with men. And I thought it was really quite interesting to see that there is an unconscious bias all the way to thinking that a woman's issue is she has babies. Not all women have babies. And effectively, women's networks are not just for women. Men should and can join in. So thank you very much. That was a very insightful 4 talks. Alas, we have no time for questions, but lunch is soon, not too soon. We've still got 1 talk, and I'm sure you'll get loads of questions over lunch. So a round of applause to our speakers from Anglia Ruskin University. Thank you very much.